Somewhere in the flat farmland south of Beijing, there is a building so large that when you stand in the middle of it, you can watch people at the far end shrink into tiny moving dots. It cost around $17 billion to build. It broke a world record before a single passenger ever walked through the doors. And here's the strange part. On a lot of ordinary days, if you go there right now, you can stand in the biggest airport terminal ever constructed and hear your own footsteps echo. So, how did China spend a fortune building the largest single terminal on the planet, deliver it in under 5 years, and end up with a masterpiece that is still waiting for its crowds? Let's get into it. First, you have to understand why this airport exists at all, because China did not build it for fun. Beijing already had an airport, the Capital International Airport, and by the late 2010s, that airport was drowning. It was handling more than 100 million passengers a year, which made it the second busiest airport on Earth. And it simply could not stretch any further. Planes were stacking up. Around 300 flights a day that airlines wanted to run just could not be scheduled, because there was no room. That is millions of trips lost every single year. When your capital city's main gateway is that congested, you do not patch it. You build a second one from scratch. And China does not do anything at a small scale. So the government picked a greenfield site, meaning empty land with nothing on it, about 29 miles south of central Beijing, right on the border with Hebei province. The plan was approved at the end of 2014, and construction started almost immediately. From that moment, the clock was ticking on a brutal deadline. They wanted this thing open in roughly 5 years. For a project this size, that is genuinely insane. Airports of this scale usually crawl through a decade or more of delays, budget fights, and redesigns. Beijing wanted it done, and done fast, time to open right before a very important date. More on that in a minute. Now, let's talk about the building itself, because this is where it gets wild. The terminal covers 7.5 million square feet. To put that in human terms, it is roughly the size of 97 football pitches laid side by side, or about 3.5 times the footprint of the Forbidden City. It is the largest single-building airport terminal in the world, and that record still stands today. This is not a cluster of separate terminals connected by trains. It is one continuous structure, one roof, one vast open space, and that shape. If you have seen a photo of it from above, you already know why people call it the starfish. 6 great arms sweep out from a central core, curving like something that grew rather than something that was built. A lot of people online swear it looks like an alien spacecraft that crash-landed in the fields outside Beijing. But the architect had something more poetic in mind. The design came from Zaha Hadid, the legendary British-Iraqi architect famous for buildings that look like they are melting, flowing, and bending all at once. She did not see a starfish, she saw a phoenix, the mythological bird of Chinese and East Asian legend, wings spread wide, rising up from the ground. And here's a detail that gives the whole project a bittersweet edge. Zaha Hadid died in 2016, 3 years before her airport opened. She never got to walk through the finished building. Her firm, working alongside the French engineering company ADP Ingénierie and Chinese design institutes, carried her vision all the way to the ribbon cutting. That vision was not just about looking beautiful. It was about solving a problem that every huge airport suffers from, which is walking. You know the feeling, you land and then you march for what feels like a mile down endless corridors to reach the exit or your connection. Daxing was designed to kill that misery. Those 6 arms all radiate from one central hall where the shops, the restaurants, and the services live. Because everything fans out from that single point, the farthest boarding gate is less than an 8-minute walk from the center. No shuttle trains, no underground people movers, just walk. For a building this enormous, that is a remarkable trick of geometry, and it is the entire reason for the radial starfish shape. The design forces efficiency. At full stretch, those gates can load the passengers of 6 of the world's biggest jumbo jets, the Airbus A380, all at the same time. But a building this big has a problem you might not think about: weight and movement. Because Daxing does something no major airport had done before. It has high-speed trains running directly underneath the passenger terminal, roaring through at speeds up to about 150 miles an hour. Think about what that means. Every time a bullet train blasts through the tunnels below, it sends vibrations up into the structure. Do that thousands of times a day for decades, and those tremors could literally shake a normal building apart. So, the engineers did something clever. They floated the terminal. They installed more than 1,000 giant rubber shock absorbers, seismic isolation bearings, that sit between the building and the ground. These cushions soak up the vibration from the trains below, and they do something even more important. They protect the whole structure in an earthquake, and Beijing sits in a seismically active region. This makes Daxing one of the largest single anti-seismic structures on the planet, engineered to survive a magnitude 8 quake. A building the size of a small city, essentially resting on rubber so it can ride out the shaking instead of cracking apart. Then there is the roof. And honestly, the roof might be the most jaw-dropping piece of the entire thing. It is a flowing, curving steel web that ripples across the whole terminal, and it was engineered by the firm Arup. This is not a simple flat ceiling. It is a hyperboloid grid made of well over 160,000 individual steel pieces. And because the roof twists and curves constantly, almost no two joints are identical. Every connection was its own custom puzzle. The steel skeleton alone used somewhere around 50,000 tons of steel, and the roof structure weighs tens of thousands of tons on its own. Holding all of that up are 8 enormous C-shaped columns that flare out where they meet the roof, and at the top of each one sits a huge skylight. Those skylights, plus long ribbons of glass running through the ceiling, flood the whole terminal with natural daylight. And they were designed to do double duty. The pattern of light on the ceiling actually guides you. Follow the glow, and it leads you toward your gate. Architecture as a navigation system. The interior finish is all polished stone and soft curves, with 5 traditional Chinese gardens tucked into the concourses, so travelers have a quiet, green place to sit between flights. And it is stuffed with technology. Facial recognition gates let you move through checkpoints using just your face. Your bags are tracked with radio frequency tags, following them in real time through miles of automated handling systems. On the sustainability side, the airport runs solar panels generating at least 10 megawatts of clean power, uses ground source heat pumps to warm and cool the building, and collects rainwater on a massive scale to manage flooding and cut waste. For a building this hungry for energy, those were serious efforts to soften the footprint. So, what did all of this cost? This is where the numbers get slippery, and it is worth being honest about it. The airport construction itself carried a price tag of roughly $17 billion. But that was never the full bill. Because the site sits so far from the city, China had to build an entire transportation network to feed it. High-speed rail lines, intercity railways, a dedicated metro express, new expressways. When you add in all of that surrounding infrastructure, the total program cost balloons to somewhere around $63 billion. Underneath the terminal, they built a ground transportation hub connecting bullet trains, subways, and buses, so that in theory, you could step off a high-speed train and take a single elevator straight up to your gate. The Airport Express can get you from central Beijing to the terminal in around 20 minutes. And on June the 30th, 2019, after less than 5 years, construction was declared finished on schedule. Then came the moment everything had been timed around. The airport officially opened on September the 25th, 2019, just days before the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. President Xi Jinping himself attended the ceremony. The very first commercial flight to lift off was an Airbus A380. It was a national showpiece, a gleaming symbol of Chinese engineering and ambition revealed to the world at exactly the right political moment. So, this is a triumph, right? A record-smashing wonder delivered on time. Well, here's the twist. Here's the part the grand opening did not advertise. For years after those doors opened, Daxing was strangely, eerily quiet. Travel vloggers who visited described walking through the largest terminal on Earth and finding it nearly empty. Shops shuttered, whole concourses silent, polished floors stretching into the distance with almost nobody on them. This airport was designed to handle 72 million passengers a year by 2025, and eventually up to 100 million. For its first several years, it did not come anywhere close. Why? A few reasons collided. The pandemic hit just months after opening, and international travel collapsed and stayed collapsed for years. Convincing airlines to uproot their operations and move to a brand new hub took far longer than planned. And there is a simpler, stubborn problem. Location: Daxing sits way out south, while Beijing's older capital airport is closer to the city and to where people actually want to be. Given the choice, a lot of travelers and airlines just stuck with what they knew. So China built the biggest terminal in the world and then had to wait for the passengers to show up. But the story does not end there, because they are showing up. In 2024, Daxing crossed 40 million annual passengers for the first time, finishing the year at close to 50 million, and that number is climbing fast, up more than a quarter in a single year. China's expanding visa-free policies pulled in waves of international travelers. New routes opened to Tokyo, Seoul, London, Moscow, Doha, and dozens more. Over its first 5 years, more than 130 million people passed through those halls. The empty cathedral is slowly filling up. The bet was never about 2019. It was about 2040, and the decades of Chinese air travel growth still to come. And that is what makes Daxing such a fascinating object to sit with. It is either one of the most far-sighted infrastructure gambles of our century, a piece of the future built years before the world was ready to use it, or it is a monument to overreach, a stunning, record-breaking building that ran ahead of the demand it was supposed to serve. Maybe it is both. Maybe the only way you get a phoenix rising out of the farmland south of Beijing is by building it long before anyone can prove you needed it. So I want to hear from you. Is Beijing Daxing a work of genius that the rest of the world will be studying for decades? Or is it the most beautiful overbuild in aviation history, a $60 billion answer to a question that had not fully arrived yet? Drop your take in the comments. And if you love these deep dives into the biggest, boldest engineering projects on the planet, hit that like button and subscribe, because there is always another giant to break down.